The South African Human Rights Commission says a court order to demolish Enyobeni Tavern in East London is a step in the right direction. 21 teenagers died under mysterious circumstances at the establishment in 2022 during a party marking the end of exams. The South African Human Rights Commission Eastern Cape manager, Dr Eileen Carter, joins us for more to unpack this conversation. Dr Carter, appreciate your time. Thanks for speaking to us. Now, how does the South African Human Rights Commission view the recent court order for Enyobeni Tavern's demolition in terms of setting a precedent for community protection from certainly some illegal operations?
Good evening, Hugo, and to the viewers as well. Well, it's been quite a journey. We know that this matter is not the first time we've heard about it. And in April, the Human Rights Commission issued its report into the Enyobeni tragedy. And in that report, we very clearly found that there has been large-scale and significant violations when it came to the stakeholders who were responsible for overseeing zoning, building regulations, liquor licensing, etc. So to then hear and find the finding from the court that this building, in fact, must now be demolished within 90 days is, in fact, right in line with the findings of the Human Rights Commission, and we think it's a step in the right direction.
So you speak about the bylaws that were broken, and certainly how the authorities appear to have dropped the ball in this instance. But let's talk about the owners of the tavern themselves. From which you were able to glean off that report, where is their liability?
So there has been matters that were meted against the owners of the tavern, and we should also note that on Monday the inquest into this matter is continuing. So we still need to very much find out what caused the deaths of these youths, the 21 youths. And we have also submitted our report for this inquest, and it has been admitted as evidence to perhaps provide also a little bit of background and context to this matter. So we are waiting in bated breath as well to find out exactly what the cause was, the direct cause of the deaths of the 21 youths. But from the Human Rights Commission, we were very clear to say there were systemic concerns that may have led to these deaths as well.
Now, the one thing that I find concerning, and as would many people, is that this report is going back to 2022 when this tragedy occurred. So we're going back 2 years. There have been instances of food poisoning of young kids in and across the country, and many of these issues have gone unresolved. Do the authorities, does the South African Police Service and those that are investigating have capacity to get to the bottom of these issues?
So I think that we must also then identify who's the relevant stakeholders here. And in a matter such as bylaws, the municipality has to be very clear in terms of the parameters that they have outlined for adherence to these laws. So then you would have, for instance, in this Enyobeni matter, you also had the liquor boards, you also had SAPs to play a role. But nationally, you also have role players. You have the legislatures. You have those who are making the policies who actually have to address these concerns from a systemic point of view. So as with a lot of other things in South Africa, for us, it's coordination. You're referring to other matters as well in terms of the food poisoning and weather. Bylaws are, in fact, being the necessary oversight is there. And as with reference to Enyobeni, again, and reflecting back to our findings in this report, there's systemic neglect when it comes to the coordination of these functions. And then just to refer towards the coordination, when we speak about the local action the LDECs, they are formed in terms of the Substance Abuse Act. And these control committees, the action committees, they are to be formed in each and every municipality. And these local action drug committees would then assist in the coordination of these issues, between SAPs, between licensing, et cetera, But what we have found is at the time of this tragedy, and even still now, these LDECs are not established in the municipalities, and certainly not in the Buffalo City municipality. So coordination, and then just going back to the drawing board and see what the legislation in fact calls upon the municipalities to do.
Now, would you care to elaborate on the legislative gaps, right, highlighted in the report And what role does the South African Human Rights Commission foresee in advancing bills such as the Liquor Amendment Bill to prevent similar tragedies?
So that was one of our very clear findings in our report, because we did not only look at the municipalities, we did not only look at the province, we also looked nationally, because you would know, and you've mentioned the Liquor Amendment Bill, as well as legislation, the Control of Marketing of Alcohol Beverages Bill, which has been left unattended for years and years on end. Now, one of the findings that the Commission made in that respect is to say that if these amendment bills were to be enacted before this tragedy, there may have been, a prevention of a lot of similar occurrences. Because if you read the legislation, and remember, this is from the policy that government itself has formulated from research, extensive research, which has been conducted. If you read the draft amendments, it very clearly says that there should be no liquor facility or outlet within 500 meters of a school or a church or a building of that respect. And those are parameters that we really feel should be considered very seriously. So from the Commission side, we have written to the ministers of both DSD and Trade and Industry. We've asked them what steps are they taking to prioritize the retabling of these bills, of these pieces of legislation, because systemically they will definitely feed into what the Commission sees as a wholesale approach that we need to undertake to prevent any further human rights abuses emanating from substance abuse.
Dr. Carter, we're sadly approaching that time again where we are getting to that period where matriculants finish exams and pens down parties are on the cards. And this is one of the reasons why we are where we are today. Now, what are the initiatives that the South African Human Rights Commission, in collaboration, I'd imagine, with the Department of Basic Education or other stakeholders, are doing to provide advice or certainly advocacy to young people during this time where they've finished exams and they are particularly excitable?
No, absolutely. The pens down celebrations are imminently on us, and we have communicated to the stakeholders that we really need to embark on advocacy campaigns. And luckily, we have the Department of Education in collaboration, the important word of the day, with the Liquor Board, with the stakeholders, with SAPS, to say that they are going and popularizing the prevention of pens down and responsible celebrations during this period. It's also something that we made finding against the Department of Education to say that they really need to up their effort to educate learners about the impact that alcohol abuse can have on their lives. So from there, we are also going to retable this, or not retable, we are tabling the Enyobeni report at National Parliament, because we feel that this discussion cannot just end. We can't just leave the matter now that the inquest is ongoing, now that the building is being demolished, in commemoration of the lives lost. We have to still have these conversations and make sure that what has happened at Scenery Park is not repeated in the future. And we are very, very resolute that there are role players that need to come to the table who may not have done so particularly well up until this point. For instance, the peace officers of the Eastern Cape Liquor Board has not been designated by the Department of Justice yet, although we have made that finding. So those are the types of interventions that we are surely not going to overlook, and we are going to be resolute in monitoring the outcomes.
So let's talk finally about what we do as responsible members of various communities when we realize that certain establishments are within 500 meters of a school or a learning establishment, or that teenagers or young people are being permitted into such establishments. Who do we speak to? Who do we pick up the phone? Is there a hotline? Can somebody be reached and be expected to act?
So my recommendation would be to be very acquainted with the local bylaws. It does differ around jurisdictions. Know at what time these facilities must close. Ask them whether they have liquor licenses. Go check on the Liquor Board websites. It's publicly available whether these outlets have liquor licenses. Contact your local municipality and report the incidents at the door. And also be very acquainted with your ward councillor. these facilities have had to obtain liquor licenses through ward committee meetings, where the ward committee needed to obtain and have a facilitation and discussion with the committee about an imminent, issuing of a license of a facility. So be very acquainted with your ward councillor, so that if you are aware of illegal or illicit activities in your area, that you report it to the ward councillor, that be made known to the local municipality, and that Section 19 notices to illegal liquor outlets be issued. That's certainly something we can commend the Buffalo City municipality on, because they have embarked on these processes. But that is up to each one of us as responsible community members as well, to report these matters and also to report them to the South African Police Services.
South African Human Rights Eastern Cape Manager Dr Eileen Carter, appreciate your time giving us a view, certainly the South African Human Rights Commission's view on the court order to demolish the Enyobeni Tavern